leader is a leader because he is a servant. This leader is someone who inspires his followers, her followers.
Through our series of TutuTalks, the Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy Foundation hopes to reframe unresolved issues within civil society and uncover what moral and ethical leadership entails.
So Yola, remember like when we first met, like you were part of my Eco Warriors program, this young, inquisitive woman who really wanted to take over the world. And I mean, I remember like during the lockdown, if you remember, like we gave you guys gardening starter kits, you know, just to keep you guys busy. You know, when a child is given a space and when a child is being seen and when a child is being empowered, how they are then given an opportunity to dream. Somebody told me that it's very hard to dream when you're in survival. And I mean, I've seen the same with you, you know, like coming from the Eco Warriors and going back to your communities and starting your own initiative. So do you actually want to share that initiative with us?
Like after you taught us about like what is happening in our world and then how people are being in denial, I felt like I wasn't doing enough. Because like what you told us, you only taught us in our school, and then like in other schools, they don't get to learn about this kind of issues. So I felt like it is necessary for me to spread what you guys taught me.
So do you feel like you're actually growing the movement?
Yes, because like every Fridays, like we usually go around and pick litter, and like we go around as a bunch. And then, like, it's such a fun, it's so much joy.
I like that, and I like the fact that you actually mentioned joy, you know, because often the climate issue is seen as this depressing, gloomy, you know, topic, but I mean, we have a lot of joy, you know, there's a lot of moments where we have fun, you know, like as you mentioned, like when we do cleaning up campaigns, we actually sing and have fun, we play games. So, I mean, I would say like, you know, also to a lot of young people, have fun while you're doing it, you know, don't take it too seriously. I mean, I have vivid memories like telling you guys about like the impact of climate change in your communities and you being so shocked, you know, that what you were already living was actually caused by the climate effects. I mean, can you maybe like tell me like what is your home situation currently?
I live in an informal settlement with my family, and then like when we have to like get an access to water, we have to like walk miles to get to the tap, and then we share like one communal tap with more than 55 families, and like it's very like dangerous.
Interesting. Hey, I mean, you spoke about like safety, and you know, like the climate environment has always been framed as a ecological issue, like it just affects the environment. And here you are telling me that it's not just about the environment, but it also affects like your human rights, okay? Because I mean, for someone who lives in your environment, who are struggling to get access to water, whose safety is very compromised, and I mean, is it incredible now that we are actually paving a way where we are saying that climate change is not only about the environment, but it's also affect the needs, specifically the needs of those who are living in marginalized communities, who don't have access to health, who don't have access to education, who, as you explained, also like lack security. I grew up in Guguletu, and Guguletu is actually very similar to how you grew up. And I remember like being young, you know, like having to leave my community, going to school, and just like seeing all of these disparities, you know, like, I mean, I would go to school, there would be these big, beautiful trees and the mountain at the backdrop. But by the time that I would go home, you know, it would be just like these rows of tin shacks and these homes, you know, with no space, no trees around. And that just like became a big concern to me. And I mean, it wasn't until I finished high school where I met a very incredible, beautiful lady who was an environmentalist and actually took me under her wing and showed me that I could actually make a career out of this. you know. And that's where I actually grew my love of working with young people and studied environmental education. I mean, going to teaching to your school, you know, Yomalela Primary School, and seeing how also like you guys were going to school Monday to Friday, but yet you were not taught about environmental issues that were affecting your schools and your community. And that just like really made me concerned. And hence we then created the Eco Club, you know, where we can inspire you guys, and but also not just inspiring, but like in creating a space where we could really amplify your voices and for you guys to share how the climate change is already affecting you and your communities. And for me, like, I find it so incredible that, I mean, there's been a lot of young people, you know, from these very vulnerable communities who are not just sitting and waiting for change, but who are actually like going on the forefront and saying like, I want to be that change. Do you feel like you are one of those young leaders?
Yes, 100% yes. I bring that change in my community by, like, I started my own group in my community where I'm teaching like younger kids about our environment, and for them like to not pollute, and then doing all the little practicing like planting and going around recycling to make eco bricks. I believe that the best place to implement change firstly is at home, because if you start like making change at home, like by doing these little things like planting your own vegetable garden and doing the meat-free Mondays, it really feels good, because like I also feel like we are doing an impact on the world.
It starts within yourself. Look at those small things, you know, that you can do. Recycling, picking up litter, switching off those lights, starting your own vegetable garden, inspiring your friends and spreading that awareness. Checking in, like, where does your food come from? You know, it's something that we often take for granted. But it's important to know, like, how your food was grown. Also, like, this consumerism, you know, society that like we always need to buy, but actually taking a pause and going like, oh, what is an impact of that to the environment, and how can we actually be part of the solution in looking at more sustainable ways of really being with our planet. It takes something small to create that change, and I think probably like that's kind of a leadership that we are looking for to young people, not to wait, you know, until when they get to parliament, but to actually look at their own situations and start to ask themselves, like, what can I do? You know, like if somebody sees like in their community that there is a litter issue, to maybe like rally their friends and organize like cleaning up campaigns.
And that is why I feel so passionate about like spreading awareness. People are not aware, like they need to be educated, especially where like I live. It's something that we can fight against for, and then it's something that I can educate them by.
What comes up for me is representation, you know, like for those little kids, you know, that you are now grooming and mentoring. I'm sure like when they see you, you know, they see somebody that comes from the same background as them, but also see somebody who didn't look at their circumstance and go like, hey, I'm being oppressed, therefore there's nothing I could do. But somebody who is like you, who has looked at that situation and said, actually let me be the change to change how I am already living the effects of climate change. Another thing that really inspires me about you is like, you know, when you look at the environmental face, is very middle class, because, you know, environment has always been framed as an issue that affects like the privilege. And you are actually changing that narrative and saying like, us as marginalized, yes, we are affected, but we're not just gonna wait and watch, but we're gonna be in the forefront, we're gonna scream, we're gonna make that noise, and we're gonna demand that change.
We as youth, like, we are supposed to be like enjoying our freedom, yet now we are fighting for our future because of adults who don't want to like to sit and table with us, the policymakers to sit with us.
People are not creating spaces for you guys to be seated at the table. And I'm kind of wondering like what qualities, I mean, do you see in a leader?
self-love, because if you first love yourself, then you can also like think about other people.
I mean, I totally agree. I think one of the truest qualities of a leader is being selfless, and not just like looking at your needs, but like looking at the needs of the people, especially people that are being oppressed, and going out of your way to help, to bring resources to those people, but also humility, like seeing yourself in other person.
How have you been inspired by Arch Desmond Tutu's work?
Yeah, I mean, I remember like when I was growing up, Guguletu, it was like post-apartheid, and everybody was talking about the incredible work that the Archbishop Tutu was doing. And it just like really inspired me, because what I would often hear is him spreading a lot of peace. And I mean, now with the work that I do, like whenever I work with young people, for me, that's always in the forefront. So even though we mobilize and organize these marches, I mean, we don't want to go into the streets, and scream, just only scream, but like we always encourage the young people to seek peace, and also inclusivity and diversity. I mean, I currently know that like in the African Climate Alliance, it's not just like kids from Cape Town, we have kids from Malawi, we have young people from Cameroon, but we also like, even in Cape Town, we have like the young people from Constantia in conversation with the young people from Guguletu, because we believe that, I mean, to solve this crisis, it can't just be like one race. We all need to come together and work together for a better future for you guys.
Yeah, I also believe that like for us to spread awareness and for us to all work together and unite is to look away from our differences. And I have been like invited in conferences to speak to in front of governments. And when I went there, I didn't only went there to represent only myself. I went there to represent every single Black youth like who is getting affected by climate change. They are voiceless right now, and then they don't know what is happening with their environment and what is happening in their lives.
And I mean, more and more, there are also studies that show that, I mean, most people that are affected are young girls and women. I mean, 70% of the people like Khayelitsha live in informal settlements. Their environment is already fragile, There's a lack of like basic human rights needs, things like water, sanitation, and safety. So, when the science says that we've got 10 years, for these natural disasters to hit our communities, and then you go back to that environment that already is experiencing floods, who is already experiencing water scarcity, and you would think, hey, like actually there's no 10 years here. I mean, these communities are already living the effects of climate change. And I think also, I mean, a lot of what has been put out, in the media is based on science. And I think there's a huge gap, for marginalized voices to take up space, but also share their stories, share how they are already affected by the climate change, so that we can start shifting that narrative and say, hang on here, there's no 10 years, like I'm already experiencing all of what you are saying is gonna happen. And I think the more we can have those voices, the more we can urge our government to shift our policies so that our policies actually marry what's happening on the ground. Activism should always start within. You should always be your own warrior and not just like always seek to help what's outside, but also being aware of what's happening. When it's getting overwhelmed, take time off, pause, take those deep breaths in and out, surround yourself with like-minded, positive people. Go out in nature, hike, go for a swim, and then come back, and fight for the cause. But don't always get stuck in fighting. For us, in the movement that you're involved with, we always try to push action, So it's not about like what you know and what the science is saying, but it's like, how can you take what the science is saying and your lived experience and start creating change? Because by creating change, that gives you hope, that things are going to change instead of waiting for things to fall apart.